You're standing on the deck of a nuclear-powered fortress the size of 3 football fields. The ocean stretches endlessly in every direction. The nearest land, probably 1,000 miles away. And then you slip, or get hit by a rogue wave, or make one wrong step near the edge. Suddenly, you're falling, 70 feet down. That's a 7-story building. And when you hit the water, the ship that was your entire world is already moving away from you at 30 miles per hour. The question isn't if you'll survive the fall. It's whether anyone even noticed you're gone. This actually happens. More often than the Navy would like to admit. And what comes next is a carefully orchestrated race against time, biology, and the brutal mathematics of the open ocean. So buckle up, because we're about to find out exactly what happens when a sailor goes overboard from a supercarrier, and why your chances of survival depend on a lot more than just knowing how to swim. Let's start with the fall itself, because Hollywood has lied to you about what hitting water from that height actually feels like. A Nimitz-class aircraft carrier deck sits roughly 60 to 70 feet above the waterline. Some spots, like near the island structure, go even higher. At that height, you're hitting the water at around 40 to 45 miles per hour. And here's the thing about water that most people don't grasp until it's too late. At that speed, water doesn't act like liquid. It acts like concrete. The surface tension hasn't had time to break. Your body is a relatively soft object, meeting an effectively solid surface at freeway speeds. Broken ribs are almost guaranteed. Collapsed lung? Likely. Internal bleeding? Definitely possible. But that's if you're lucky enough to belly flop. If you go in feet first and lock your legs, the sudden deceleration can compress your spine. You turn yourself into a human pencil and try to pierce the surface rather than smack it. Do this right, and you might escape with just some spectacular bruising and the story of a lifetime. Do it wrong and you're unconscious before you even know you're in trouble. But let's say you nail the entry. You're conscious. Nothing's broken. You made it through the fall. Congratulations. Now comes the actually hard part. The ship is moving. A Nimitz-class carrier doing regular operations? That's 30 knots. For normal humans, that's about 35 miles per hour. You just jumped off a vehicle moving at highway speed. And unlike a car that can slam on the brakes, an aircraft carrier doesn't stop. It can't stop. These things displace 100,000 tons. They have a turning radius measured in miles. By the time the officer of the deck even realizes someone went overboard, the ship has traveled hundreds of yards. You're in the water. The ship is already a football field away and getting farther every second. The first wave of panic hits harder than the ocean did. Because you're watching your entire world, your home, your shipmates, your only hope of survival, sail away from you. And it's not coming back. Not yet anyway. Here's what's actually happening up on the ship. Assuming someone saw you go over, the absolute first thing is someone needs to notice. On a carrier, you've got roughly 5,000 people aboard. Everyone's focused on not getting killed by jet engines, propellers, or any of the million other ways a flight deck tries to murder you daily. If you go over during the night, in rough seas, your chances of anyone seeing you fall drop dramatically. There are documented cases of sailors going missing for hours before anyone realizes they're not just in their bunk or working in another part of the ship. But let's be optimistic. Someone sees you, they do exactly what they're trained to do. They throw the nearest flotation device over the side, point at the spot where you went in, and start screaming the 6 words that turn an aircraft carrier into controlled chaos. Oscar. 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 Hearer. Oscar. Hearer. Man overboard. Man overboard. Immediately, whoever saw you fall becomes the most important person on the ship. They cannot look away. Not for a second. They become a human pointer, keeping their arm extended toward your last known position. Because here's a fun fact about the ocean. It all looks exactly the same. There are no landmarks. No street signs. Just endless blue or gray depending on the weather. Lose sight of where you went in, and finding you becomes a statistical nightmare. The bridge erupts into action. The officer of the deck hits the man overboard alarm, a specific pattern that everyone on the ship recognizes instantly. Training kicks in. The helmsman executes what's called a Williamson turn, a specific maneuver designed to bring the ship back to the exact spot where you fell. The carrier begins a wide, sweeping turn. This isn't a speedboat. The turn alone takes several minutes. Meanwhile, the air boss is scrambling helicopters. They'll have it airborne in under 5 minutes. Those helicopters are your best chance. They're fast, maneuverable, and equipped with rescue swimmers who do this for a living. But if all the helicopters are down for maintenance, if you went over during a weapons drill when nothing can fly, you're waiting for the ship to come back. And time is not on your side. Let's talk about what you're experiencing in the water, because this is where things get really interesting in the worst possible way. First, the temperature. Ocean water temperature varies wildly depending on where you are. In the Persian Gulf, you might be looking at 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Uncomfortable but survivable for hours. North Atlantic in winter, try 40 degrees. In water that cold, you have maybe 30 to 60 minutes before hypothermia shuts your body down. Your fingers stop working in about 10 minutes. Your ability to swim effectively, gone in 20. But temperature is just one problem. The ocean is never still. Even on a calm day, you're dealing with swells, currents. Every time a wave lifts you up, you can maybe see a few hundred yards. Then you drop into a trough and you can't see anything but water walls around you. The ship looks impossibly far away when you can see it. Most of the time, you can't see it at all. Then there's what's under you. This is the part that messes with your head. You're floating in water that's potentially thousands of feet deep. But the monkey part of your brain is screaming about the void beneath your kicking feet. Every shadow in the water becomes a shark. Every piece of floating debris becomes a threat. And speaking of sharks, let's address that because everyone always asks, are you going to get eaten by a shark? Probably not. Shark attacks on humans are rare. Shark attacks on humans in the middle of the ocean are even rarer. Sharks are ambush predators. They like prey that's near the surface. Near the coast, near the food chain. They understand a thrashing human in the middle of nowhere isn't their usual menu. But, and this is important, there are absolutely sharks in the open ocean. Oceanic whitetips are known for showing up at disaster sites. They're curious, persistent, and if you're bleeding from your impact injuries, you've just rung the dinner bell. The advice from survival experts? Stay calm. Don't thrash. Keep your movements smooth and deliberate. Easier said than done when you're fighting hypothermia and exhaustion. Now let's say you're doing everything right. You're staying afloat. You're not panicking. You're conserving energy. The ship saw you go over. They threw flotation devices. Maybe you even managed to grab one. Now it's just a waiting game. How long can you actually last? Navy teaches a survival technique called the heat escape lessening position, or HELP. You pull your knees up to your chest, wrap your arms around them, and basically curl into a ball. This minimizes the surface area of your body exposed to cold water and protects your core. If you're in a group, there's another technique called the huddle, where everyone faces inward, pressing their chests together to share body heat. But here's the catch. Both of these require flotation devices, a life jacket, a cushion, something. Without that, you're treading water. And treading water is exhausting. An average person in decent shape can tread water for maybe 2 to 3 hours before exhaustion wins. Add cold water. Add the stress of the situation. Add any injuries from the fall. And that time drops fast. There are documented cases of sailors surviving 20+ hours in the water. There are also cases of people lasting less than 1. The variables are brutal. While you're fighting for survival, the ship has become a floating emergency response center. The captain has immediately notified the chain of command. Other ships in the area are alerted. Aircraft are scrambled. The search area is calculated based on currents, wind, time elapsed, and drift patterns. Modern carriers have something called the Man Overboard Indicator System. When someone goes over and the alarm is sounded, the system automatically marks the GPS coordinates. It factors in the ship's speed and heading to calculate where you should be. But should be and are can be very different in the ocean. Currents don't always flow in straight lines. Wind can push you in unexpected directions. If you're unconscious and just drifting, you're at the mercy of physics. The helicopter arrives. This is the moment. The rescue swimmer, a highly trained specialist who volunteered for one of the most dangerous jobs in the military, gets ready to jump. These people are absolute units. They're trained to rescue people in conditions that would kill most swimmers. 30-foot waves? They'll do it. Shark-infested waters? They've done it. You are their entire mission right now. The helicopter hovers. The swimmer drops into the water near you. They swim over. And this is where things get tricky, because you are not thinking clearly anymore. You're hypothermic. You're exhausted. You're terrified. Your brain is running on fumes. And when the rescue swimmer reaches you, every instinct in your body screams to grab onto them like a life raft. This is how rescue swimmers drown. A panicking person will climb on top of their rescuer, push them underwater, and kill both of you in the process. Rescue swimmers are trained for this. They know how to break holds. They know how to subdue you if necessary. They will punch you unconscious if that's what it takes to save your life. No judgment. You're not in control anymore. They are. They get the rescue strap around you. It's basically a harness. The helicopter winches you up. You're pulled from the water, swung through the air, and hauled into the helicopter. The moment you're inside, the corpsman starts working, checking for injuries, treating hypothermia, starting IVs if needed. You're wrapped in thermal blankets. The helicopter races back to the carrier. You land on the deck. You're rushed to medical. The ship's doctors take over. And here's something most people don't know. Even if you feel fine, even if you're conscious and talking, you're not out of danger. There's something called delayed drowning, or secondary drowning. Water in your lungs can cause inflammation and fluid buildup hours after you're pulled from the ocean. Sailors have died in the medical bay after seemingly successful rescues. But let's say everything goes right. You survive the fall. You survive the water. You get rescued. You recover. What happens next? The Navy investigates. Every man overboard incident triggers a formal inquiry. They need to know how it happened. Was it an accident? Equipment failure? Horseplay gone wrong? Were safety protocols followed? The results determine everything from ship-wide safety stand-downs to potential criminal charges if negligence was involved. And then there's the psychological aftermath. You fell off an aircraft carrier and lived to tell about it. That sounds like a cool story until you realize you now have to go back to work on that same ship, walking those same decks, standing near those same rails. Some sailors develop severe anxiety. Others refuse to go near the edge. The Navy provides counseling, but not everyone takes it. Pride is a hell of a drug. Here's the thing though. Not everyone gets rescued. The Navy doesn't publicize exact numbers. Sometimes you're found, but it's too late. Sometimes you drown before the helicopter arrives. Sometimes you survive the water but die from your injuries on the way back. There are sailors who went overboard and were never recovered. The ocean keeps them. Their families get a folded flag and a lot of unanswered questions. The crew gets a memorial service on the fantail, because the mission doesn't stop for grief. So what's the actual survival rate? It depends on who you ask and how you calculate it. Some studies put it around 25%. Others claim higher. The variables are insane. Time of day, sea state, water temperature, how quickly you were spotted, whether helicopters were available. Sheer, dumb luck. The Navy has spent millions improving man overboard response. Better alarm systems, better tracking, better training, GPS-enabled personal locator beacons that some ships issue to deck crew, thermal imaging cameras that can spot a person in the water at night. The technology gets better every year. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The best technology for man overboard situations is prevention. Don't go overboard in the first place. Sounds obvious, right? But fatigue, complacency, and the simple fact that aircraft carriers are inherently dangerous workplaces mean it keeps happening. Deck crew work 16-hour days during operations. They're exhausted. They're moving fast because flight operations demand it. They're dodging aircraft, avoiding jet blast, and navigating a deck that pitches and rolls with the sea. Add night operations. Add bad weather. Add the fact that you're working 70 feet above the ocean with nothing but a thin rail between you and the void. And suddenly, it's a miracle more people don't go over. The Navy drills man overboard procedures constantly. Every crew member knows the alarm. Everyone knows their role. Pilots practice spotting people in the water. Rescue swimmers train year-round. The ship runs drills where they throw a dummy overboard and time how fast they can recover it. Because when it's a real person, when it's your shipmate, when seconds matter, you don't want anyone hesitating. In the end, falling off an aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean is survivable. People have done it and lived. But it requires a perfect storm of good luck, good training, good conditions, and good timing. Miss any one of those elements, and you become a statistic. A name on a memorial. A story the crew tells new sailors to scare them into being more careful. The ocean doesn't care about your training. It doesn't care about your rank. It doesn't care that you have people waiting for you back home. It is indifferent in a way that's almost peaceful if you think about it long enough. Which you will, if you're floating in it watching your ship sail away, wondering if anyone saw you fall. So next time you see footage of an aircraft carrier, those massive floating cities that project American power across the globe, remember this. For all their size, all their technology, all their firepower, they can't protect you from gravity. They can't protect you from the ocean. And if you go over the side, whether you live or die comes down to a roll of the dice that no amount of military hardware can control. That's what happens when a U.S. sailor falls off a Navy aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean. Thanks for watching.